of all, I am going to tell about what is my topic. So today's topic is neuroscience and integrated approach to the biological sciences. So we are working in neuroscience research laboratory in zoology department, as he told in my description. Then now I am going to tell you that what is an overview. So neuroscience and its significance and application to the biological sciences, I am going to tell about this. So neuroscience is basically an integrative approach due to the regulation of multiple function with neurons in all animals. So neurons are the basic unit which regulate multiple functions in all animals, as we know. And that's why the nervous system is a dynamic in all animals and cover vast field in the biological sciences. And these fields are neuromechanics, neurophysiology, neuroanatomy, neuropharmacology, behavioral neuroscience, developmental neuroscience, cognitive system, and molecular neuroscience. So what we are doing, I'm especially focusing what students they get from this lecture. So what we are doing in our lab is some three aspects like neuroanatomy, behavioral neuroscience, and molecular neuroscience. Okay. So in this, I will be going to elaborating neuroanatomy, behavioral neuroscience, and molecular neuroscience. So what is neuroanatomy? Let me first discuss about it. So neuroanatomy is the study of the relationship between structure and function in the nervous system, or that include microscopic and macroscopic structure studies. So a study in macroscopic and microscopic structures, and that's why deriving functions of physiological functions of neuron cells. So that is called as neurotomy. So what we do actually, we do here, and technology and techniques we are adapting to see neurotomical structure of cells, और हम कैसे structures को determine करते हैं. तो that is techniques are you all know that hematoxylin and eosin are classical techniques. Then for neuron specific staining technique, we use here Crecil violet staining. Then some advanced techniques like immunohistochemistry. Okay, so neuroanatomy describes all these features, and then we come to behavioral neuroscience. So this behavioral neuroscience, we are working with that also in our lab. So behavioral neuroscientists examine the neurophysiological processes that serve to uncover the functional relationship between behavior and the environment. You all know very well that environmental stimulus affect our behavior definitely. And certain changes in environment will lead to many related physiological and behavioral and metabolical changes. So how we note behavior technically is that one is team, some example are here, what we are doing in our lab, T-MACE test, anxiety related test, and open field test. So third one aspect is molecular neuroscience. So molecular neuroscience is a branch of neuroscience that examine the biology of nervous system with molecular biology and molecules. So and biochemistry also. So molecular genetics, protein chemistry, and related methodologies adapted in the molecular neuroscience. So these are three aspects basically, which I am going to elaborate in my entire lecture. So molecular neuroscience, in this what we do are oxidative stress markers are there, and then there's some advanced technologies like Western blot analysis, etc. So next I am going to tell you that objective of this lecture is like to enlighten the significance of neuroanatomy in the biological sciences and its applications. And second one is to illuminate the applications of behavioral neuroscience in the biological sciences. And third one is to reveal the role of molecular neuroscience and its function in the biological science. तो हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव रहेगा कि न्यूरो एनाटॉमी का क्या रोल है बायोलॉजिकल साइंस में, और बिहेवियरल न्यूरोसाइंस का क्या रोल है, और मॉलिक्यूलर न्यूरोसाइंस का क्या रोल है. So let us first take about in detail neuroanatomy. So neuroanatomy, as we all know that the nervous system is comprised of brain and peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system. The central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system. You all know these are basic things like ganglion and nerve. So this is called as ganglion and nerves are called as peripheral nervous system, and brain, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord as known as central nervous system. So there are some lobes in brain. First one is occipital lobe, and this is responsible for processing and interpreting visual information, and it's the seat of primary visual cortex actually. The second one is temporal lobe, and this is major processing center of sound and some forms of memory as well. And third one is parietal lobe, and it is the home for the somatosensory cortex and area responsible for sensation and touch information. हम जब senses करते हैं, touch हमें होता है, तो ये parietal lobe इसके लिए responsible है, and also spatial processing. Okay, and next one is the frontal lobe, and frontal lobe is the most complex part of the human brain, and this bit that separate us from our primate cousin, so to speak. What we speak is the action of frontal lobe. Okay, so this is the largest brain lobe, and it is responsible for executive function with a hand in reasoning, decision making, sensory integration, and planning and execution of movement, etc. Now I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am.
And
yes,
my
yes,
slides are clear?
Yes, madam. Very clear.
Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So
प्लीज फुल स्क्रीन कर रहे हैं अपनी स्लाइड, तो थोड़ा विजुअल हो जाएगी हम लोगों को थोड़ा और अच्छे से.
ओके, इसमें मेरे लैपटॉप में ना फुल स्क्रीन का सॉरी ऑप्शन नहीं है, और इसमें मैं सीरियसली वेरी सॉरी, बट आई विल गिव यू ईच एंड एवरीवन. मैम आप प्रेजेंटेशन वर्षा मैम से आप ले ले मेरा, एंड देन now so I am going to tell you about what is central nervous system. You are all aware of basic things. I am not going into detail because these are all basic things and everyone know about it. So nothing is very rocket science in that, but this is necessary in this presentation to come up you with the basics also. So first of all, I told about lobes of this brain in neuroanatomy, and then I'm coming to the next point that these are some important things that how central nervous system and peripheral nervous system works. So all activities, all bodily activities like metabolic, physiological and behavioral responses are related with CNS and PNS. So PNS here consists of nerve and ganglia. I already tell you about that. And CNS consists of brain and spinal cord. But what is the difference? CNS is protected by this spinal cord and blood-brain barrier. But PNS, peripheral nervous system, these all are peripheral nervous system like brachial plexus nerves are going in musculocutaneous radial medianal nerve, and these nerves for PNS are going on to the thoracic abdominal nerves, intercostal, submucosal, and lumbar, plexus obturator, sacral, sciatic, tibial, peduncle. They all are exposed to the environment, and a certain stimuli then can change our entire chemistry of our body. So these are very important aspect with respect to biological science, with respect to our whole body system and not our whole, all animals' body system. Okay. So now we come to the functional area. So I already told you about parietal lobe and temporal lobe, and these are some 14 functional area in our brain that are very important in governing all of the bodily activity and movements like that. This is cerebellum, and cerebellum is responsible for controlling motor coordination. Then some are association with the hearing and sensory areas, some are somatosensory associate areas. So this will form or create an important part in our body. So now techniques adopted. What we adopt in our lab is classical staining technique. First is classical also give rise to various clues about environmental changes or bodily metabolical changes, physiological changes. So here we use in our lab classical staining techniques. So classical staining techniques, you all know about hematoxylin and eosin staining technique. So hematoxylin and eosin staining technique helps identify different types of cell and tissue that provide important information about pattern, shape, and structure of cell in a tissue sample. And it is used to help diagnose the diseases such as cancer and neurodegeneration, what we are doing that. So also called as hematoxylin and eosin staining. So basic principle of hematoxylin and eosin are the principal stains that you use for demonstrating nucleus and the cytoplasmic inclusions. And here alum, alum is one component that acts as a mordant, and hematoxylin containing alum stains nucleus light blue, and which in turn red in the presence of acid. So the cell differentiation is achieved by treating the tissue with acid solution. क्या होता है कि न्यूक्लियाई को हेमेटॉक्सिलिन स्टेन कर रहा है और आपका साइटोप्लाज्मिक कंटेंट को ईओसिन स्टेन कर रहा है, तो ये पिंक और जो ब्लू डिफरेंशिएशन होता है ना, उसके बेसिस पे हम आइसोलेट कर देते हैं कि न्यूक्लियाई आपकी कहाँ है और साइटोप्लाज्मिक इंक्लूजन्स कहाँ पर है. So that is the main principle of classical staining technique, and this really still works. So see, in this slide, my student Dr. Julie Jain, she performed some experiment on rotenone-induced toxicity, and she gave treatment of rotenone plus quercetin, one active antioxidant component, and she has seen some changes over there, and very nice slides she obtained. That control group possess less structural deformity as usual, and when provided with rotenone, then structural disturbances and irregularity and shrunken hypochromatic chromatolysis, some abnormal nasal granule distribution, these can be shown here. And with the help of, she has given antioxidant quercetin treatment, and then she has seen that some normal structure retained at this level. So what students are doing on classical hematoxylin and eosin staining technique, what I am going to tell you here. Then histological and changes on liver, she has seen in liver also, and she found a similar result. And she did this on brain. These are Purkinje fiber, and in light microscope that are showing cerebellum section. And of my mice offspring, pups exposed to rotenone. The cerebellum of this control group of mice that is showing no histological alteration and Purkinje fibers. These are sequentially arranged here. Then rotenone treated group showing reduced number of Purkinje neuron in cerebellum, and this suggests that it works, and then the proper procedure when adopted doing hematoxylin and eosin staining, then we got a very good results. So next one is some sort of advanced technique like immunohistochemistry. Okay, so nowadays we are using immunohistochemistry. So the general immunohistochemistry protocol consists of 4 main steps like fixation, antigen retrieval. In this, antigen antibody reaction going to take place in the second step. Then third one is blocking. Then another one is antibody labeling and visualization. So in fixation, we keep everything in its place. Tissue. Everything means tissue. And then antigen retrieval is to increase the availability of protein for detection. So immunohistochemical techniques are sensitive, and these are specific technique, and they detect antigen basically in tissue section by means of immunological and chemical reaction. And it can also detect a wide variety of antigen in multiple animal species. So a standard procedure of immunohistochemistry also include formalin fixation, paraffin embedding of tissue, and method standardization of new antibody and troubleshooting are also emphasized. So antigen and antibody reaction are basically going on in immunohistochemistry. Somewhat this is more advanced than hematoxylin and eosin staining technique. Okay. So my student Dr. Wahidul Hassan, he performed in my lab IHC in cholinergic neurons and IHC of dopaminergic neurons. So here you can see some dots, white dots in blue area. These are neurons in cholinergic area. So we can detect antigen retrieval. This enables an antibody to access the target protein within the tissue. And these masked epitopes can be recovered using enzymatic or proteolytic antigen retrieval or heat-induced antigen retrieval methods. So now he is working in Rochester. So he did here. And this is the slide of the same area of cholinergic neurons. He also induced with rotenone toxicity and then treated with some antioxidant like quercetin and curcumin. So, and then he counted neurons in all groups and he found a very good result after doing IHC. So this is one of the best technique of deriving neuroanatomical structures. And he got some paper in good journal or publishers like Wiley Online Library. So what are our deliverable regarding neuroanatomy is, first is neuroanatomy offers a wide range of technique for identification and classification of neuronal group in brain. Then another one is neuroanatomy include not only the morphology of the structure but also its function. हम function भी detect कर रहे हैं साथ में, structure ही नहीं पता चल रहा है हमको, anomalies भी जो है उससे related we can detect it as well. Then third one is classical neuroanatomy still informs much of our modern understanding of functional neuroanatomy. Then immunohistochemistry recently used to detect the microscopic changes in the tissue is also used to reveal the function of the brain. So these are about what anatomy is. Okay, so behavioral neuroscience also in our laboratory. Then what is behavioral neuroscience? So behavioral neuroscience is the aspect of the broad interdisciplinary field of neuroscience that is concerned with the biological basis of behavior. And then substantial topics covered in behavioral neuroscience that include broadly learning and memory, then motivation and emotion and sensory processes, and most recently genetic and molecular biological basis of behavior or substrates of behavior. So behavior is definitely an important aspect of animals' life, and like you're governed so many things. If we feel fear and afraid of something, then it will create biochemical changes in our body, hormonal changes in our body. So many reactions are going on. So we can say that behavioral neuroscience is almost entirely an important aspect of neuroscience and biological science as well. The next one is behavioral studies we perform here, like that behavioral neuroscience is a prime field because of that. Behavioral neuroscience is a prime field for studying the interface between environmental and the organism. So because the nervous system is the body's rapid response system for adapting external stimuli, that's why we are using this field enormously in recent research, etc. And in fact, of the three physiological systems that have evolved in all vertebrates to interpret environmental cues are nervous, endocrine, and immune system. It is the nervous system that enables almost instantaneous responses to external challenges. So we can say that all three systems are very complex in our body, like nervous system, endocrine, and immune system. So nervous system is slightly much more complex due to this enables almost instantaneous responses, or we can say sudden responses to external stimuli or challenges or environmental challenges. So here I am going to tell you that environmental stressor say, for example, environmental stressor excite some neurochemical in the body of an animal, and they can lead to neurodegeneration and motor function changes, memory, sleep, and mood and cognitive behavior, etc. So what are the apparatus we are using to execute behavior acquisition, etc.? So here are some experiment we are performing in our lab, like Y-maze test, novel recognition test, or anti-maze test, then weightlifting test, then forced swim tests, etc. This Y-maze test is a Y-shape apparatus that is situated, each and every arm of this is situated at 120 degree of angle. Okay. So Y-maze test actually many parts of the brain, including the hippocampus, septum, basal forebrain, and prefrontal cortex and cortex are involved in this task. So we are using here Y-maze test. Then another one is the novel recognition test. So in the novel recognition test, the novel object recognition task is used to evaluate cognition, particularly recognition memory in rodent model of CNS disorder. The TMAS test is used for behavioral tests for measuring exploratory behavior in animal, especially rodent models for CNS disorder or central nervous system disorder. Then forced swim tests are there. In that, rodent behavioral test used to evaluate depressive-like states and behavioral despairs. Okay, so these are some tests we are performing in our lab. Then some parameters like open field test, also there, rotarod are also there, rope test, falling time recorded in this, distance traveled in open field and resting time, ambulatory time, and time of mobile recorded in this. Then elevated arm maze are there, then forced swim test, then light and dark box test, etc. are also available. Okay, then next one is, so after doing behavior, behavior acquisition will be performed in the laboratory, and some software, or we can say computer aided techniques will be used here, like Animate software. Some version are available online, and some software are also available. So we acquisite behavior and we perform accessibility on that also. So we can derive conclusion, we can infer, we can derive inferences, after deriving so many conclusions over there. The next one is, this is slide taken from thesis of my second student, and she provided open access in one open area to the rodent or mice, we can say, and it is control mice recorded on software. And when rotenone toxicity was provided to these mice, then it is recorded as well. Then she finds some changes in both the group. So the behavioral testing of rodent model is very important part of neuroscientific research. And the variables such as velocity and time spent in a particular area of interest consistently and reliably detected by some software like EthoVision XT and Animaze, etc. Okay. Next is she also got publication over there. The next one is we are also using in our lab model such as zebrafish. So I am going to tell you about the significance why we choose zebrafish as a model to study neuroscience in biological sciences. So the zebrafish is here a premier model for developmental genetics and is used increasingly for ethology and behavioral neuroscience in modern era. Then zebrafish, because it lives across diverse habitats and it encompassing tremendous variation in temperature, water quality, altitude, and community composition. Next one is zebrafish are advantageous because it has short reproductive cycle. They have high number of offspring. They have high throughput drug screening, low volume of drug we can use on that. And then adult zebrafish are able to regenerate different organs also. Then its genome is fully sequenced. And another very important part is over 70% of annotated human genes have a true orthologs in the zebrafish as well. Next is zebrafish mirror test. My one student, Manisha, she is doing on zebrafish model, and she because she is doing mirror test over that. So zebrafish model is a proper choice in mirror test, and they share significant genetic similarity to human and also known to be highly social creatures. And their robust social behavior such as shawling, boldness, aggression, and social preferences make them ideal for studies investigating social behavior. Next is zebrafish is usually exhibit boldness by biting the mirror placed in the tank. So its behavior is important. They can also be seen to trace their reflection by quickly swimming back and forth. Back and forth movement, वापस जाना और उससे मिरर से टकरा के आना, ये सब जेब्रा फिश के लिए वैल्यूएबल, हमारे लिए वैल्यूएबल रहता है उसका बिहेवियर नोट करने के लिए. They can also be seen to trace their reflection by quickly swimming back and forth, and these behavioral responses are helpful in examining social interaction and behavior. So it is important, one of the important animal model in studying neuroscience or biological sciences. Okay, she is doing. Then she performed some videograms and she prepared over there. So videogram based assessment of anxiety behavior. They are representative videogram of zebrafish that are obtained by using a TalkStraight. See this TalkStraight software, video tracking software, and these are developed. These can develop heat map videogram that obtained by using ZebraTrack method ImageJ, that based on video tracking software of same zebrafish. During 6 minutes, she respectively taken the pictures over there and display the scientific pattern of exploratory behavior. So she is doing on this diagram of control is movement of zebrafish in all over the tank. And when she provided alcohol-induced induction, then see the changes are arising after 20.20% of alcohol, I think. At 0.40 on, she has seen some more changes, and it is the movement of zebrafish in the tank. So this is a nice experiment she did over there. And she also got some good publication. So proposed my deliverables related with behavioral neurosciences. First of all, one fundamental goal of behavioral neuroscience is to understand the decision-making processes. And second one is Carl Lashley was the scientist who developed lesion behavioral methodology to analyze brain substrate of learning and memory, and revolutionized the field. The next deliverable is perception, spatial cognition, sense, motor processing, and integration. We can observe all these things in behavioral neuroscience. And then animal model of addiction we can use. And then neurodegenerative disorder, what we are doing right now is also significant, some significant things what we can do in neuroscience research. My third aspect is molecular neuroscience. I told you about neuroanatomy, I told you about behavioral neuroscience, and third one is molecular neuroscience. So what we do in molecular neuroscience is locating neurotransmitters, neuronal gene expression, then molecular mechanisms of neurodegeneration, like some of the diseases are very prevalent in the world, like Alzheimer's, जिसमें हम भूल जाते हैं. अल्जाइमर में कुछ पार्ट न्यूरॉन्स के हमारे डैमेज हो जाते हैं ब्रेन के अंदर, तो हम भूलने की कैपेसिटी होती है उसमें. तो ये डिजीज ये है कोग्निटिव एंड मेमोरी लॉस को बोलते हैं अल्जाइमर डिजीज. सेकेंड वन इज पार्किंसंस डिजीज एंड थर्ड वन इज हंटिंगटन डिजीज. And many more diseases are there, but my focus is on that only in today's lecture. So these neurodegenerative disorders are how much prevalent in all over the world. You can see data in this slide. Millions of people worldwide affected with Alzheimer, Parkinson's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and Huntington, etc. So severity is so clear here. So we can say here that Alzheimer disease, now I am going to tell you about Alzheimer. How it derive and what is molecular aspect of Alzheimer disease. So Alzheimer disease is the most prominent cause of dementia characterized by progressive cognitive deficits, memory impairment, and behavioral abnormality. Okay, So all things are related. If we perform behavioral experiments, we can draw out some conclusions regarding Alzheimer's disease. Now, 40 million people suffer from AD worldwide, and this community is expected to rise to over 150 million people by 2050. ऐसा expected है कि over 150 million people by 2050 they may rise who will be suffered from Alzheimer's disease. So this is a very prevalent disease. The origin of AD has not been fully elucidated, but epidemiological studies have underlined a multifactorial etiology comprising a less prevalent autosomal dominant pattern with mutations in amyloid precursor protein. So what is going on, Eddie, that we perform epidemiological studies, then we can conclude that some amyloid beta precursors, these kind of protein and pre-senilin 1 and 2 are deposited in some specific area or regions of brain, then we can say that this will be more prevalent when these precursors are deposited in a particular area of cell. And these are the risk factor. And despite different etiology in AD, the distribution of amyloid beta peptide accumulation throughout the brain is similar, affecting the medial, frontal, and lateral temporal and parietal cortex, which are responsible for memory and functioning, learning, memory, and functioning. Okay. So the brain of AD patient display a pathological accumulation of amyloid beta peptide that will further aggregate to form amyloid beta fibril plaques. Plaques का formation हो जाता है amyloid beta fibril plaques का, and an intraneuronal accumulation of neurofibrillary tangles consisting of hyperphosphorylated aggregated microtubules associated tau and representing the two major disease hallmarks. तो tau proteins मतलब कुछ wrong proteins का deposition that will lead to Alzheimer disease, and that can be detected with the help of molecular neuroscience techniques. I want to say that. Then another one is most prevalent is Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease is the second most common neurodegenerative disorder after Alzheimer, and it is characterized by tremors, bradykinesia, rigid muscle, and impaired posture and balance. In 2017, 7 million people suffered from PD worldwide, and epidemiological studies reveal that 1 to 3% of those older than 65 years and 4 to 5% of those aged over 85 years suffer from PD. So this is also related with aging processes. So what is the molecular mechanism underlying in the cause of Parkinson's disease? I must tell you about that. The molecular mechanism of PD pathogenesis, the hallmark of PD are loss of dopaminergic neurons. See, this one is dopaminergic neuron in the substantia nigra, pars compacta, and one of the region in brain, and depletion of dopamine in striatum and Levy body accumulation. These are Levy body, some wrong kind of protein Levy body accumulated in the particular region, substantia nigra of your brain, and this will cause Parkinson's disease. So as for numerous neurological disorder, the origin of PD has not been fully elucidated. However, its etiology reveals that environmental toxin exposure and genetic factors such as mutation on alpha-synuclein, SNCA, Parkin, DJ1, PINK1, and GBA1 can be linked to PD. However, aging remains the major risk factor. So these are the reason how the wrong protein accumulated in the brain cell and they lead to diseases. And we can detect all that with the help of molecular biology, molecular neuroscience related research. Okay. And what motor impairment lead to bradykinesia, rigidity, tremor, cognitive decline, psychiatric symptoms like depression, etc. when we get a Parkinson's disease. Okay. So, what methodology are students adopted in our lab? Are they used to carry out some research over biomarkers like lipid peroxidation and glutathione antioxidant level. They derive protein carbonylation assay. They carry out some estimation of hydrogen H2O2 or peroxide level. They carry out superoxide dismutase activity, catalase activity, and protein estimation, etc., using various instruments situated in the lab. And also some general parameters like alkaline phosphatase, aspartate aminotransferase, alanine aminotransferase, urea, and creatinine, etc. So let me first describe about what are these biomarkers. We study a biomarker to reveal the puzzles of neuroscience or molecular neuroscience. So biomarkers are a biological molecule found in blood, other body fluids, or tissues that is a sign of normal or abnormal processes in our body, or of a condition or disease, condition of disease. So a biomarker may be used to see how well the body respond to a treatment for a disease or condition. We have to detect biomarker first, also called molecular marker or signature molecule भी हम इनको कहते हैं, ठीक है ना. Next one is lipid peroxidation. One of the important biomarker of our body or biomarker for disease is the lipid peroxidation. So we here probably use malone dialdehyde reaction test assay we perform in the lab. It is the most frequently used biomarker of oxidative stress in many health problems such as cancer, psychiatry, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, or cardiovascular diseases. So here one substrate, I told you that malone dialdehyde can be measured by thiobarbiturate acid reactive substances assay. And this method is convenient to determine relative lipid peroxide content of sample, including plasma, serum, cell culture, supernatant, and urine sample. Okay. Next one is carbonylated proteins. See, some protein fractionated and they going to accumulated in cell, and they cause also some kind of disease parameters. So these are carbonylated protein, what we going to estimate in molecular neuroscience. So the uses of protein carbonyl CO group as biomarker of oxidative stress has some advantages in comparison with the measurement of other oxidation product because of the relatively early information and the relative stability of carbonylated protein, because they are stable molecules, so we can detect that easily in the cell. Carbonyl groups, aldehyde and ketone, are produced on protein side chains, especially of proline, arginine, lysine, and threonine. When they are oxidized, then these moieties are chemically stable, which is useful for both detection and storage. We can store them, we can detect them in a lab or in a test tube. So this can be a helpful marker, carbonylated protein. The next one is antioxidants also act as a biomarker. Like one of the most important is glutathione or GSH, that is often referred to as body's master antioxidant. And this is composed of 3 amino acids like cysteine, glycine, and glutamate. So glutathione can be found in virtually every cell of human body. Like reduced glutathione is a linear peptide of L-glutamine, L-cysteine, and glycine. Okay, so this is also one of the important biomarker. I am going to tell you about in short because of time limitation. So what are the proposed deliverables of molecular neuroscience? Why we perform molecular neuroscience? So the scope of molecular neuroscience cover system, and it forms the molecular basis of neuroplasticity and neurodegeneration. Then molecular signaling that compiles the release of action of neurotransmitter and communication and transmitter of signal across gap-like synapses. You all know very well that synapses are going to do communication between our neurons. So we can detect signaling, we can detect neurotransmitters communication in between different kinds of neurons. And we can derive some conclusion over there by doing molecular neuroscience and signaling experiment. Next is some ion channels work in transmitting electrical impulses was detected by, first of all, A.L. Hodgkin and F. Huxley in 1950. They're studying the giant axon of the squid. So some ion channels are also there in our neuron or every cell. That was detected by some scientists over there. So that may also be helpful for detecting molecular mechanism in biological sciences. Then next one is ionotropic and metabotropic. These ion channels are also called as ionotropic and metabotropic receptors, and these are found in हेलो।
हाँ जी मैडम, थोड़ा सम अप कर लेंगे।
अच्छा सम अप, हाँ मैडम ये खत्म हो रहा है। मेरी आवाज तो आ रही है ना क्लियर? जी मैम बिल्कुल खत्म हो रहा है, मुझे बहुत इंटरेस्ट आ रहा था उसको बताने में, बिल्कुल सम अप करती हूँ। So then ionotropic and metabotropic receptors are there. So in last, I must say that neuroscience is a multidisciplinary science, and that is very good area and very good applications, scopes in biological sciences, and that comprised of the anatomy, behavior, physiology, molecular biology, developmental biology. This comprised of computer science and mathematical modeling also to understand the basic regulation of function and neuronal circuits. So this is I was going to tell you about my team. This is my team of neuroscience in my lab in zoology department. Dr. Wahidul Hassan, whose work I have shown you right there in the slides. He is doing now postdoc research in Mayo Clinic Graduate School of Biomedical Science in Mayo Clinic, USA. And then Dr. Julie Jain, she is working in zoology department itself. Miss Banisha, she is using zebrafish as a model, and she is also working in our neuroscience research lab. And Miss Ravina, she is also working with me. And these are my references.